This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. For months now, nursing shortages have left Manitoba hospitals unable to fully staff medicine, trauma, and surgery wards. This has forced emergency rooms to become overflow wards because there's nowhere else for patients to go. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports on what happened this weekend when Manitoba's biggest ER ran out of room.
Critically ill and injured people come to Health Sciences Centre emergency. This weekend, 12 of them were lined up on stretchers in an entrance hallway because there was no room inside.
We had a lot of very high acuity patients coming in all at the same time, in particular on Sunday. And there was nowhere else for them to really go. These were trauma patients, these were neuro patients, these were patients that need HSC.
Some of these patients waited for hours with conditions like a fractured hip, broken facial bones, and a serious stroke.
People are having strokes. We have a whole process in place to try and get them into their care as quick as possible, and yet we can't move them forward. So their stroke is progressing, parts of their brain are continuing to die because we can't get that person into a hospital bed.
Dr. Merrill Paul said he's never seen the situation so bad.
Over this past weekend, we've had incidences where we had 2 critically ill patients placed into 1 resuscitation bed. So literally double bunking patients in the most acute areas of our department.
The severe nursing shortage is only one cause. Doctors say they're seeing patients who are sicker than usual because they haven't been able or haven't tried to get medical care.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for physicians and nurses and staff to work where they know someone is too afraid to even come in because the wait is atrocious.
Doctors say all healthcare workers are doing their best.
How plausible is it that we could see somebody die sitting on a stretcher in a hallway?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's already happened.
Paul says he wants to see more very sick patients treated in other parts of the hospital.
They're not dying as a result of improper care. They're dying as a result of decisions that we've made. They're dying as a result of decisions that we're making to minimize risk to others around the department and to have that risk all reside within the department.
Sean Young says that's already happening.
We have to make sure that we're there for the most acutely in need patients. But it does mean other patients are going to wait, unfortunately, until we can actually build up that workforce.
CBC News reached out to the Health Minister and Premier for comment. They deferred to Manitoba Shared Health. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Manitoba woman who just finished nursing school wants to see action from the province. She's been studying healthcare from a new angle this past week as a patient. Carla Crisp fractured the bones in her lower leg on Thursday and waited nearly 5 days for surgery. The CBC's Holly Carrick has her story.
Carla Crisp was celebrating her graduation from nursing school last week at a reception in Hecla. She was crouching down at a laptop to play some music when she heard a snap.
I fell to my butt and then I thought, oh, well, my shoe must have broke. So I'm like looking at my feet and both my shoes are still on, and I went to like move my leg and my ankle just flopped to each side. So I was like, oh no.
Crisp was taken to the Gimli Community Health Centre late Thursday night, and x-rays confirmed she broke her tibia and her fibula bones in her lower leg. The 30-year-old spoke to CBC Monday afternoon from her hospital bed in Gimli. After waiting 4 days, she was transferred to the Grace Hospital in Winnipeg for surgery Tuesday morning.
I didn't realize, I guess, like I always knew, like working in different facilities, how bad our healthcare system has gotten, but I didn't realize like the state, how awful this is.
Shared Health, which coordinates healthcare services in the province, says currently the wait for orthopedic surgery ranges from 1 to 2 weeks. In a statement, a spokesperson said, "We can appreciate how upsetting surgical postponements can be for individuals, particularly those suffering pain due to injury." Shared Health says there was a large volume of orthopedic trauma surgeries in the province over the weekend, and that urgent and emergency surgeries are prioritized. Crisp says she recognizes doctors and nurses are overworked and says the government needs to do better.
This is a crisis, and what is the province doing about it? Where are we at with physician recruitment? What are we doing to promote more people to come here to work?
When I last spoke to Crisp, she was expecting to be in surgery tonight. Holly Carrick, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Two healthcare aides at a Winnipeg personal care home now face criminal charges of assault. The two women, one of them 49, the other 36, worked at Oakview Place. They were arrested yesterday. Police were called in June after an internal investigation found two aides used what are called inappropriate physical actions on several residents. At the time, health officials said there'd been 15 victims. None of them required medical treatment as a result. The criminal charges laid relate to 5 victims.
The investigators can only lay charges on strong evidence that's provided, and so there was clearly evidence that supported 5 victims and no more than 5 victims.
Constable Danny McKinnon doesn't expect more charges in the case. Now, according to the WRHA, the allegations were first brought to the attention of local Extendicare management through a whistleblower in February. Neither the health authority nor police were alerted about the allegations until another whistleblower went to the WRHA in June. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced a federal holiday for this coming Monday, the day of the Queen's funeral. In Manitoba, it will be called a day of mourning, and all non-essential government services and offices will be closed for the day.
We have also chosen to move forward with a federal holiday on Monday. We will be working with the provinces and the territories to try and see that we're aligned on this. There are still a few details to be worked out.
Federal employees and workers in federally regulated industries will be eligible for the Monday holiday. Provinces are making their own decisions about whether their employees will get the day off. Now, again, here in Manitoba, the Premier says non-essential government services will be closed Monday. Schools and childcare facilities will be open. Heather Stephenson encourages schools to observe a moment of silence. There will be a 21-gun salute at the Legislative Building to coincide with a federal memorial service in Ottawa, and that will be followed by a royal gun salute of 96 rounds to honor each year of the Queen's life. Now that we have a new monarch, there is a renewed sense of hope for some Indigenous communities, that King Charles shares some of their values and that it'll help Canada meet its treaty obligations. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh reports.
That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today.
A new monarch, and for many who view the Crown-Indigenous relationship as more than a relic of the past, hope for a new start.
We have a direct relationship with the Crown, and that has never been respected because of the state of Canada.
As a young elected chief, Mark Hill of Ontario's Six Nations is hoping the King will influence Canada to live up to treaty obligations.
Maybe King Charles will come forward with a new vision and a new way of thinking when it comes to the relationship of Indigenous people.
Often during the Queen's trips here, Indigenous leaders accused Canada of falling short, a legacy of inequality, attempted assimilation, and broken promises.
This Queen, while having a very long reign, didn't do very many things for Indigenous communities.
Yegon Sinclair is a professor of Indigenous studies.
Our relationship with the Crown means a lot, and there's still hope there that the Crown will build on that relationship.
Charles has shown an interest in some areas of Indigenous concern: the environment, climate change, youth leadership.
I know that our visit here this week comes at an important moment.
Earlier this year, he spoke of the importance of reconciliation.
With Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples across Canada committing to reflect honestly and openly on the past and to forge a new relationship for the future.
But some don't hear much in those words. Manituk Thompson is an Inuit knowledge keeper and former politician.
I feel that the monarchy has to end now with the Queen.
I like Prince Charles. I've met him on a couple occasions already.
Manitoba Métis President David Chartrand is optimistic. He says it was Queen Victoria who urged Canada to negotiate an end of hostilities with the Métis. An example, he says, that can be applied today.
From our perspective, it's a very important role that the Crown does play and continues to play.
While Charles has spoken about the importance of reconciliation and the need for a new relationship, just how big a role the new king sees for himself in it is not clear. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Not all pay increases are created equal. That's what employees of the Manitoba government are finding out. As the CBC's Ian Fraze explains, political staff and other senior executives are getting a higher wage boost than anyone else.
Unionized public servants fought the Manitoba government in court for higher wages. But it's not those government workers getting the biggest pay bump, it's the ones holding partisan jobs.
The government turns around and gives their staffers and the people that support them more money, while the members of our union serve Manitobans and do the work that help Manitobans.
Kyle Ross with MGEU represents government employees. He says his members feel disrespected. It was them, unionized labor, who fought the government. The province wanted to freeze their pay for 2 years. Unions fought back in court, and eventually the government gave up. Now unionized workers won't cash in like political staffers and other non-unionized staff.
It's really a slap in the face to the workers of the provincial government.
Public servants will get around 4 years' worth of back pay. Unionized workers won a 1.4% pay bump for the 2019 year through arbitration, while the government is giving non-unionized staff a 2.4% hike that same year. A political scientist says some people will criticize the discrepancy.
The province has not really been giving major salary increases, and this has been going back to the days of Pallister. And so now to see political staffers getting an increase that's more than what the public sector have been given over the past number of years, the optics aren't that great.
But Christopher Adams says partisan staff have to deal with other challenges. If government loses power, they're out of work.
If the job is precarious, doesn't have much for job security, then you have to be paying them a little bit more to attract them.
The province says the extra pay will help them fill those jobs. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The people running to be Winnipeg's next mayor are pledging to improve safety and create economic opportunity in the city. CBC's Cameron McLean caught up with some of them on the campaign trail.
People in Winnipeg are waiting too long for ambulances. The standard wait is 9 minutes, but in June, the city said some were waiting up to 15 minutes. That's why one Winnipeg mayoral candidate says he'd make it a priority to hire more paramedics and get more ambulances on the road.
There are far too many people in the city of Winnipeg who have faced the difficult choice of whether to go to the hospital on their own or wait for the ambulance that sometimes takes hours to get there.
Willette called on the city and the province to finalize a new long-term funding arrangement for paramedics. The last agreement expired in 2017. He also called for a review to look at whether paramedic and firefighter services should be separated. The services were amalgamated in 2000. In another announcement on emergency services, Sean Loney says police are spending too much time responding to repeat offenders. He says he can use social enterprises to offer employment so people can turn their lives around.
And the point is this: the people who are committing crimes in the city are doing so over and over and over again, and will continue to do so until they have access to the interventions that we all know work well.
Loney helped found Build, an agency that employs people with criminal records. He says that will help break the cycle that sees people reoffending. Over near the airport, Jenny Mottkaluk said she would fast-track getting sewer and water services out to the industrial area known as Centerport South. She says the city is missing out on millions of dollars and thousands of jobs.
Building infrastructure that supports economic growth is key to my plan for Winnipeg. And the inexcusable delays have cost the city of Winnipeg hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 12 years, and every year of delay is just simply too costly for us.
The city is waiting on federal funding approval to complete sewer and water services out to Centerport. Election day is October 26th. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And now we head to Wolseley, where people are cutting stems and making bouquets, all part of a grassroots fundraiser. CBC's Emily Brass took some time to smell the flowers.
I think this one will be nice.
Erica Newman loves opening up her garden to her neighbors.
They're surprised at first, and then I say, "You want a flower?" And sure, and I said, "Choose one," and it just brings me joy.
Now she's putting her flowers to another use, raising money for Manitoba Harvest.
This is a nice one here.
She's trying to get the whole neighborhood involved, even asking for some of their blooms.
I don't even know her name. I knocked on the door. I said, you have beautiful flowers. I'm not sure if I will have enough. I have lots, but she said, cut anything. It's going for a good cause.
This is the second flower sale this season. Newman's family raised $300 last week for the food bank, selling bouquets to people walking by.
For Manitoba Harvest, whoever can go buy milk for their kids in school or a backpack or whatever. But now you get a flower because you helped me early in spring too.
She's only lived in Wolseley a year now, but nearly everyone seems to know her.
Erica's the best neighbor. She's going to bring everybody together here. She's great. And she gardens all the time, and she gets anyone's help that walks by, and we're all happy to provide it.
Digging a hole to put one of her plants in, or moving one of her plants to another place. So it always takes more than a minute or two. It takes maybe about 15-20 minutes when you walk by her house.
If I run out of vases, we'll use jars.
Neighbors also pitched in by donating vases and rainwater for her flowers. Newman says she learned the power of giving from her mother and wants to pass that on to the next generation.
The neighbors came, sat on the stairs, and it connects them, you know.
A connection she hopes continues to blossom. Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist John Sauder joins us now. We have had beautiful flower growing weather lately. Nice and sunny.
Yeah. I want to say welcome back.
Oh, thanks, John.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. I'm back. I'm off again tomorrow, but don't worry, I'm back Thursday. It's
you know what?
very confusing.
You're talking about the sunshine. We've had beautiful sunny weather for flowers lately. You're right. But that's coming to an end because we're heading into a cloudy stretch. Let's get into your weather and have a look at what is a chilly 15. I wore shorts to work today. Regretting that a little bit because step outside, northeast wind around 22, and it's down to 15. We got it to 17-ish today, 17.2, I believe. So forecast high was 18. May have got there between the hourly reports, but winds today were gusting to about 30 or 35 now at 22 kilometers per hour. And you can see the leading edge of that cloud just reaching the Red River Valley. I'll zoom in on this a little bit for you. And yeah, we're getting into that cloud cover that's about 5,000 or 6,000 feet off the ground. So it's just sort of a filtered sunset, a little bit of cloud in the sunset, not a bad thing. And then the system that's rolling in is really centered south of the border, but there's a warm front here, which is starting to spread some showers already into western portions of the province. And I'm not expecting too much in the way of rain tomorrow for the Winnipeg area, Red River Valley. However, later in the day, we will definitely see that. So as we get into Wednesday afternoon, some showers in the north, and some of these showers, at times heavy, moving into the Interlake region and parts of the province right along the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border. And then watch what happens as we go from 4:30 to about midnight or shortly after. Some heavier rain, and a lot of this is north of Winnipeg, but it does swing through in the overnight period where we could pick up a significant amount of rain. Thursday doesn't look all that wet, but I do think the cloud here will provide us with some showers. Question mark here, is this high pressure that clears the north going to force this cloud a little bit farther south late on Thursday? Remains to be seen, and I'll be looking at that definitely tomorrow. And then more cloud around on Friday, and it looks like more showers possible. All right, up to 10 p.m. on Wednesday, we get about 4 millimeters, and then those numbers really start to jump up as we get into the overnight period and then on into early Thursday. And we've got a bullseye of 26 for Winnipeg, 28 in Kenora, and 32 in Dryden, and then 17s for Lac du Bonnet and down through Piney. So, yes, like I say, a significant rainfall, and a lot of that happens Wednesday night and early Thursday. Tonight, though, just increasing cloud. 10 degrees is your morning temperature, and the winds start to pick up tomorrow afternoon. We're at 18 once again, but east winds are at 30 to 40. Don't expect to need the sunglasses tomorrow. And then in the long range, we're right around that seasonal number, which is 18. So 17s on Thursday and Friday, and then just a cloudy 19 on Saturday.
The weather update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
If you're in need of a midweek pick-me-up and want to support local social programming, we have you covered. A concert will be held at the West End Cultural Centre tomorrow night. It's a fundraiser for Ray, or Resource Assistance for Youth. Nick Friesen is the communications coordinator at Ray. He's been helping organize this concert. Hi, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Janet, thanks so much for having me.
Funds raised from this concert are going to help your eviction prevention program at Ray. Tell us about that program.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of programs. Obviously, Ray is kind of known as a drop-in center on Sherbrooke Street, but we have mental health, we have housing, we have social enterprises. It's the housing department, though, where eviction prevention comes into play, and that can be anything from advocating on behalf of our participants when they become tenants. It can be coordinating a dispute with a landlord. It can be, helping out with utilities, helping out with rent, things like that. So it kind of varies depending on the tenant. So it's as unique as it has to be. But yeah, it's kind of just helping people when they're going through a difficult time.
It's not easy to find affordable housing in Winnipeg at all. How wonderful is it when you're able to keep somebody from being evicted?
Our housing staff works tirelessly with our participants, and just to be able to see these young people, finding good, safe housing, it's incredible. I've sat in on just a couple of moves and stuff like that. Getting video and photos, helping out, stuff like that. But it's, just to see everyone being safe and being happy and going from, because it always starts out, the kids come into the drop-in center and they're talking about the program, they're getting to know people at Ray, they're doing intakes, they're understanding what the program is, and they realize that, they can take a classroom program, they can get employment, they can get their own place, they can get a roof over their heads, and they can pay for it themselves. That's what's really rewarding, is realizing that they can actually just get something over their heads.
So tell us about tomorrow night's concert. Who's playing?
Tomorrow night, it's one of those concerts where I asked, and thankfully everyone I asked said yes. So we have Greg McPherson, who's one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time. He'll be playing the show. We also have Cassidy Mann. She's an incredible up-and-coming singer-songwriter, just released a new EP. We have Dom Hodder, who is actually one of our team leads over here at the Level Up Training Center in our classroom center. We have Cozy Manos, who is an incredible young MC, and we actually have one of our participants. He goes by CJ the Gray, and he'll be closing out the evening. He is an incredible young Indigenous performer. He's a hip hop artist. He and I were talking for about 20 minutes yesterday just about hip hop and what we grew up on and stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited to put on a concert tomorrow night.
Well, Nick Friesen, we hope you have great support from the community. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Janet.
Don't forget to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Your latest headlines are there. We're also now posting the whole newscast. You can catch up and stay connected anytime you like. After the break, new federal measures to help people make ends meet and what the new Conservative leader has to say about them. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The Prime Minister announced new measures today aimed at helping low-income Canadians. The announcement was delayed when the Queen died last week and was made today after the new Conservative leader slammed Trudeau, accusing him of being out of touch with people who are struggling to pay their bills. The CBC's Ashley Burke reports from the Liberal caucus retreat in New Brunswick.
Can I get a photo to send back to Australia? Of course.
It almost feels like an election campaign.
Good to see you, of course. What's your name?
The Prime Minister shaking hands with voters in New Brunswick and announcing a new policy.
There are Canadians out there really hurting. What we're doing with these specific measures is targeting those most vulnerable, those who are most hard hit by the increases in inflation.
The proposed legislation would double the GST benefit for 6 months, provide a $500 payment to low-income renters, and up to $650 a year for some families with children to help pay for dental visits.
and we have won.
The NDP's leader says none of it would have happened if their party hadn't pushed for it since the spring.
And the response from the Liberal government, from Justin Trudeau, has been, it's not our fault, or it's worse in other countries. Neither of those responses helps a family that is hurting right now because the cost of living is going up.
The Conservatives' new leader also tried to take credit.
Justin Trudeau might have learned the lesson from the fact that I won the leadership. He suddenly took an interest in inflation. After 2 years of my warning him that his inflationary money printing deficits would cause this problem.
He said Trudeau's out of touch and has called the Liberal and NDP deal a radical woke coalition. Liberal ministers don't agree.
Frankly, I don't even know what it means to be woke. I think we have to get used to that. That's the kind of politics he wants to bring in our country.
Thanks, everyone.
Trudeau also attacked Poilievre's style of politics.
The Conservatives choosing a path of amplification of anger and misinformation instead of actually figuring out how to respond to the real threat of climate change, how to respond to the real threat of making sure everyone is included in the economic growth.
A well-known Conservative MP in Quebec, Alain Reyes, announced today that he's leaving the Conservative caucus, saying that his values are not in line with the party's new direction. Ashley Burke, CBC News, St. Andrews, New Brunswick.
Meantime, the government announced millions of dollars in aid to flood-ravaged Pakistan. Ottawa will send $25 million in response to the flooding and to support development projects. It will also match donations from Canadians up to a total of $3 million. Pakistan's been inundated by months of monsoon rains. More than 1,000 people have been killed, with millions homeless and facing an imminent food shortage. CBC's Salima Shivji reports.
The pain of the displaced is immeasurable, excruciating. Many millions in Pakistan, forced to leave their submerged homes with only what they could salvage, are now perched precariously in tents, exposed to the elements. We're sitting in the open with a storm blowing through, this man says. Our families, our children are miserable. Please help us, he pleads. For weeks now, the record monsoon rains have been violent and relentless, joining with glacial melt to drive up floodwaters, overpowering more than a third of the country. Homes, roads, livelihoods, all gone, with aid barely making it to many areas. Pakistan's army is now scrambling to protect a crucial power plant in the south, one that supplies electricity to millions of Pakistanis.
90% of district Dadu is underwater. We still are on our toes until and unless these floods, these waters, these hill torrents are finally passed.
Even as more rain is on the way, the effects of climate change crystal clear in a nation that barely produces carbon emissions and yet is bearing the brunt of the devastation fueled by greenhouse gas emissions. On the weekend, the Secretary General of the United Nations toured the worst-hit areas, an attempt to train the world's eyes squarely on a country ravaged by extreme weather, to drum up critical global financial support. A message again hammered home at the UN headquarters in New York.
That the people of Pakistan is in dire need. Unfortunately, not the first time, but it is the last moment we can make change.
A plea that the people of Pakistan hope travels far as they brace for more rains, with despair setting in, amid the realization it could take months before these floodwaters fully recede. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Well, we're into week 2 at many colleges and universities across Canada, but thousands of international students missed orientation and are still not in class because they can't get their required study permits. Immigration Canada says it's implementing several measures to help tackle a backlog, but as Talia Ricci learned, students are stuck, waiting. They're upset and they're losing money.
Right now, definitely very stressed. Filled with anxiety.
SJ planned to study life sciences at University of Toronto, but she's still in Singapore. CBC Toronto isn't using her full name because she fears speaking out might affect her study permit application.
I don't think I sleep too well nowadays because I'm just so worried about not being able to basically start my first year of college.
The IRCC says the average processing time is 12 weeks, which SJ has now waited. The government says as of August 18th, the number of study permit applications to be processed was 163,600. It says 64% of those applications are currently within its service standard of 60 days. Canada's immigration minister says they're working to reduce the pressure on the system.
There's no silver bullet to this, though. We recently shared that we're adding 1,250 staff to our department just to boost processing. The numbers that I'm seeing are starting to show that we're going to be trending in the right direction.
The Canadian Alliance of Student Associations says it's been hearing from frustrated international students who have yet to arrive and have lost thousands of dollars canceling flights and paying rent. That's also what one immigration and refugee lawyer is hearing from some of his clients.
So they miss Welcome Week, they miss getting to know campus, they miss introductions to friends, and those things that are really core to any student's university experience. Even pushing back their start date by a couple of weeks can have thousands of dollars in implications.
We're seeing frustration, we're seeing pain, we're seeing confusion, and we're seeing a failing system. If IRCC, for example, look at the numbers, looking at how many resources they're available, say, unfortunately, many of you won't be processed. You can govern yourself accordingly. That has not happened.
The IRCC says it's publishing monthly data online to keep Canadians up to date on its progress toward reducing the backlogs. Students like SJ waiting in limbo hope they'll be on a plane to Canada soon.
Every one of my friends that I know of, they're starting university anywhere that they want to, and then all their studies have began. They probably have made new friends, and I'm still stuck at home, and I don't know when I can go.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
The National Holocaust Monument in Ottawa is meant to honor the 6 million Jews killed during the Second World War. But the Jewish community in the city says it's concerned about how some people are using the monument as a photo backdrop. The CBC's Nicole Williams reports.
Stepping into the monument, it's hard not to be overcome with somber reflection. Towering gray concrete walls, a flame of remembrance, symbols and signs everywhere, dedicated to the millions of Jews murdered in the Second World War. But the monument's striking design has consistently attracted another kind of audience. From Instagram selfies to music videos to fashion campaigns like this, people have used the public monument as a backdrop ever since it was inaugurated in 2017.
To use it as a backdrop for your art is a complete and utter desecration, and it is somewhat unfathomable to me that nobody's learned this lesson yet.
It's one this local fashion brand recently learned the hard way. It posted these videos filmed at the monument on its website and social media channels last year, advertising its newest collections. But recently, the videos have gotten a lot of attention online, and criticism has been growing.
And this is a memorial to one of the worst genocidal events in history. 6 million people murdered, and among the 6 million were 1.5 million children. I was one of the lucky ones, if you like, because I was survived. So it just seems very sad and very disappointing.
After CBC reached out to the company, the owner issued this apology. She says, from a creative perspective, the artistry of the memorial seemed to be a perfect fit for what my team and I were looking for aesthetically for that particular campaign. I offer my deepest apologies and regret making this decision. I made an honest and immature mistake as a new business owner. The videos have since been deleted, but members of Ottawa's Jewish community say this isn't the first time this has happened and likely won't be the last.
It is clearly understood that Canadians lack the information that they should have about the Holocaust. And so that calls for more education, more Holocaust education within the school system, more education around the monument.
The people I spoke to say taking and sharing photos and videos here is okay, as long as it's in the spirit of educating others about the Holocaust, because even though this is a public space and there are no official rules about how to use it, that's what this monument is for. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
We'll have the latest on tributes to the late Queen, and then John Sauder will bring us his Manitoba forecast. Stay with us. The Queen's coffin has arrived in London and been transported to Buckingham Palace.
Royal salute. Present arms.
The coffin was flown from Scotland to the Northolt Air Force Base on the outskirts of London, accompanied by the Queen's daughter, Princess Anne. That was followed by a vehicle procession to Buckingham Palace, met by King Charles and the Queen Consort, Camilla. The Queen's coffin will remain at the palace overnight before being moved to Westminster Hall, where it will lie in state. Mourners will have a chance to view the coffin before the Queen's state funeral on Monday. Now, John, last evening you were talking about the possibility of frost around Swan River. We had a frost warning in effect.
Yeah, no frost warnings tonight, but I did some checking. Swan River at 5 o'clock this morning was at 0.0, and the winds were out of the south at about 4 kilometers an hour. Perfect for frost, so I think there could be some flowers kind of keeled over in that area of the province. None of that tonight. Doesn't look like any of that in the future. I'll explain why here in a couple seconds, but we'll look at your current temperatures. We're cooling off 15, and that's the airport temperature, and our temperature down at the Forks. 17 still in Morris, 16 in Steinbach at the moment. All across the rest of the province, made it to about 17, 18 in some locations today, but dropping off by a couple of degrees, and this will happen through the supper hour now that we are seeing our sunset happening much, much earlier. So everyone between 15 and 17 in the south, and pretty much the same across much of the north. A little cooler in Thompson, Gillam, Island Lake, and Lynn Lake, and of course Churchill at 7 right now, but 16 and 17 in Flin Flon and the Paw. Your forecast conditions for tonight stays relatively rain-free, I guess, over into northwestern Ontario. A little bit of cloud moving into Kenora and Fort Francis and Red Lake, but fairly clear, and 6 in Dryden. Red Lake, you could see some frost outside the region in low-lying areas with a low of 3, but not really a chance of that happening here across the south. Risk of frost in Pinawa, but that would be, again, in low-lying areas. Temperatures only dropping to 8. We're looking at 7 around Brandon, 9 in Dauphin, Swan River at 6 for an overnight low. Generally increasing cloud, already cloudy out to the western regions. We'll see clearing skies farther north, though, and a little bit of patchy fog from Thompson down through Norway House and areas east. Gillam, God's Lake, Island Lake tonight, and clearing in Churchill and down to 4. And then tomorrow we're looking at anywhere from 13 to 17. Showers developing in the northwest. 17s here in the west and through Thompson, Norway House and Island Lake, and 18 in Gillam for tomorrow. So that is above the seasonal normal for northern Manitoba. Here in the south, normals would be around 18. We'll see some rain around Swan River, though. That happens in the afternoon. Dauphin, just cloudy in Brandon, 19, 20 degrees in Portage and Morden, down through Carman as well, and 18 here in Winnipeg. Lots of cloud cover around. May see some sunnier breaks early in the day down closer to the international border around Emerson. It's generally a cloudy day for Kenora and Red Lake, 19 and 16, and 20 with a sun-cloud mix in Fort Francis, and a sun-cloud mix as well in Dryden. Now, in the long-range forecast, the 7-day forecast, which is still to come, I'll show you some warmer numbers as we get through the weekend and on into early next week.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Coming up after the break, how a local social enterprise catering business is helping tackle hunger in Manitoba. Remember, if there's an interview or a story you missed or you want to see it again, maybe you want to share it with a friend, you'll find it on our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Subscribe, you can catch up and stay connected anytime. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.